We're giving a rating to every settlement in Fallout 4 by using the PRSTN or Preston Rating Scale. Its 5 key concepts determine how easy it is to build a nice settlement and is not how much a settlement needs your help. The scale is made up of proximity, radiance, securities, total build area, and notable elements. Proximity is how easily you can run to get more resources if you run out of materials and caps while you're building. This could be boosted by a town, but a town with little to no resources will not help. Radiance isn't the amount of radiation, it's the visual appeal of an area and how nice the views are from it. Securities are third in the Preston model and are measured off of the workshop's non-numerical defense or its natural defenses, as well as material securities like junk. Total build area scales directly from how much buildable area there is. Notable elements are elements that are not commonly found in every base. Each one of the described criteria will account for 1/5 of the Preston rating. Now that you know what to expect from the Preston model, we'll be rating the settlements in the order that they're displayed on the Pip-Boy. Abernathy Farm can be acquired by completing Returning the Favor or neutralizing the residing family. It receives a 6 in proximity for its fairly close range to Concord, Wicked Shipping Fleet, and wildlife. The tower is a nice structure and offers a great view of the city, giving it a 7 in radiance. Unfortunately, there are no surrounding defenses outside of the tower, but there is a decent amount of scrap, which gives this settlement a 5 in security. Since it is a large settlement, it's been given a total build area rating of an 8. This unfortunately isn't higher because of a limit set on the build height. It receives a 6 in notable elements thanks to that tower and the 2 farm patches, giving Abernathy Farm a Preston rating of a 6.4. Boston Airport is an interesting one as there are no settlers here. You can acquire it by completing Shadow of Steel or defeating the Brotherhood of Steel. There is no water, there is no dirt, there are no things to sustain life. It receives an 8 for its close proximity to Robco Sales and Service, the Brotherhood of Steel, and the East Boston Police Department. It's also notable that it's close to the Mechanists Lair. The surrounding views and bit less than preserved waiting area grant a 6 in radiance. There is little to no security though, especially if you're unfriendly to the Brotherhood since they'll spawn above the workbench. The reigning Brotherhood, alongside a quarter of the settlement being surrounded by walls, gives it a securities rating of a 5, mainly due to the scrap. The total build area here is rated a 4 since it's only the size of the waiting area, and it gets another 4 in notable elements just because it's the waiting area. This gives Boston Airport a Preston rating of a 5.4. Bunker Hill can be acquired after the Battle of Bunker Hill by speaking to Kessler. Bunker Hill's surprisingly quiet unless there's a raider attack, and aside from maybe the USS Constitution, it lacks in surrounding resources, so it gets a 6 in proximity. On a positive note, Bunker Hill offers really nice views from inside and outside of the settlement. It gets a 7 in radiance, which is negatively affected by the walls surrounding the settlement. The wall only offers 2 entry points alongside the variety of scrap, so it receives a 9 in securities. The total build area of Bunker Hill is a 5 over its initial 4 because I enjoy building on top of the large building in the center, which can be jumped to from the top rail of the nearby scaffolding. The Hill of Bunkers receives a 10 in notable elements because of the monument and wide variety of available unique buildings, which gives Bunker Hill an overall rating of a 7.4. Coastal Cottage is a cottage that is near the coast, and it can be acquired simply by eliminating the 1 raider inhabitant and then claiming the workbench. As it's close to the Eastern Enclave camp as well as near the fish packing plant and Hugo's Hole, it receives a 7 in proximity. 6 is the radiance of this settlement because the view is partially obscured by the fish packing plant, though this is slightly offset by the interesting terrain of the settlement and cliffs that offer natural defense. It has a moderate amount of scrap, giving it a 6 in securities, and does slightly better in build area with a 7. The unique hole and truck give it a 5 in notable elements, presenting Coastal Cottage with a 6.2. County Crossing can be acquired by completing Minuteman quests and has many resources available to it from the nearby National Guard Trading Center and more distantly around the Revere Satellite Array. That gives it an 8 in proximity, but there is not much to see here, and the surrounding areas and distant view of Bunker Hill are just enough to give it a 4 in Radiance. There are no natural defenses, and there is little to no scrap, giving it a 3 in security. It makes up for those negatives some in total build area with a 7. Since the crossing is more of a blank slate consisting of a standard farm patch, dilapidated house, and a large puddle of water, it gets a 4 in notable elements. It does have this little mound of dirt that I really enjoy for some reason. This leaves County Crossing with an overall rating of a 5.2. Covenant can be acquired in 2 ways, either by completing Human Error and then by speaking to Jacob, or by, you guessed it. It receives a 6 in proximity as it's only close to Mystic Lake Sewer and Taffington Boathouse, leaving it with limited resources. It receives a 7 in Radiance as the small houses and enclosure bring a very unique environment, but the surrounding areas do kind of minimize the beauty held within the gates. The wall does help to provide a 10 in security, and it's further solidified by the amount of scrap available within the houses. The build area, very limited, and while you do get a border outside of the wall, the settlement still only receives a 4 in total build area. There are many clean and unique houses, and of course the walls surrounding the settlement, giving it a 7 in unique elements. This provides Covenant with a 6.8 on the Preston scale. Croup Manor has one of the most unique houses, but ghouls have taken residency in it. You must clear them out of the house and the basement before you can claim this workshop. 7 is what the proximity rating of Croup Manor is, due to it being relatively close to Nahant's Sheriff Department, Wharf, and Chapel. Not only are the views from the house and cliff great, but the house itself and the circle driveway are very aesthetically pleasing, granting it an 8 in Radiance. It does only receive a 5 in security due to the lack of resources in comparison to the build area, but the points it does get are mainly from the cliff. It receives a 6 for its total build area. The large house, basement, and circle driveway give this settlement a 7 in notable elements. This leaves Croup Manor with a 6.6 overall on the Preston scale. Dalton Farm can be unlocked by completing the second half of Blood Tide. It's the northernmost settlement of Far Harbor and is pretty far from everything. The closest notable loot area is the Oceanarium or the Day Spa, which gives Dalton Farm a 4 in proximity. It makes up for its sum in Radiance with a 7 due to the beach and very relaxing lakeside-esque feeling. There's not much natural defense though, aside from the water, and there's plenty of scrap, including 2 full-size buildings, giving the settlement an 8 in security. This is a large settlement, which gives it an 8 in build area, and in that large build area, there is an entire beach that has a very nice overview, and the scrappable buildings, and also the dock, giving it an 8 in notable elements. This gives Dalton Farm a score of a 7. Echo Lake Lumber Mill is easily one of the most livable settlements. Once you complete Turn Back the Fog Small Bertha, this workshop on the island becomes available. Due to the lack of major resources in the proximity, it is given a 6, as there is still the bait and tackle and the spring. It's given a 7 in Radiance due to the relaxing waterfront and the notable structure surrounding it. It receives a 9 in securities as it's nearly entirely surrounded by one thing or another. The total build area here is large, giving it an 8. Echo Lake is given a 9 in notable elements due to the large buildings, stands for seating, and the lumber mill, which gives it a 7.8 overall. Egret Tours Marina can be acquired by neutralizing Phyllis, or by accessing her terminal and confronting her with your findings. There is a broadcast tower, Coast Guard pier, junkyard, and more within a decent distance, giving this settlement an 8 in proximity. Due to the waterfront, small diner of sorts, and overall aesthetic, it gets a 7 in Radiance. Only some small natural defense is provided by the water, otherwise 2 of the surrounding sides are a little higher than the center part. so it gets a 6 in security with its resources accounted for. The total build area here is not large, but can be expanded by building a scaffold up to the existing roof, so it's been given a 7 in total build area. The Marina harbors a workshop, multiple-story building, and a small shed. Also, the small diner on a dock. It receives a 10 for notable elements, which leaves it with a 7.6 overall. Finch Farm's one of my favorite settlements. To acquire it, complete the quest Out of Fire or neutralize the Finches. It's very close to the Saugus Ironworks and Revere Satellite Array, which gives it a 7 in proximity. You may be surprised to hear it, but it also receives a 7 in Radiance. One of the most underrated features about Finch Farm is the ability to build on the overpass, and the views from up there are astonishing. If you're only up on the overpass, it's an easy 10 for security against everything but vertibirds. So most of the settlements down below though, and it gets a 4 in security. The total build area with the overpass accounted for is an 8. As far as notable elements, you've got the house and the overpass. The house doesn't contribute much, but it is given a 6 in notable elements between the two. This means Finch Farm has a Preston rating of a 6.4. Moving on to Graygarden, this greenhouse also has a secret like Finch Farm, being that the superstructure of an overpass here can also be built on. It can be acquired by completing Troubled Waters or evicting the robot residents. The proximity of Graygarden to resources is a 6, as it's not too far from Beantown Brewery, Rocky Mountain Narrows, and a junkyard. Radiance is something that excels here, as once you make your way to the top overpass, you have a view of the Commonwealth like no other, giving this settlement a 9 in Radiance, and the greenhouse doesn't look that bad either. The overpass alongside the scrap on the ground provide a rating of 6 for security. The total build area here is an 8 due to the medium to large area on the ground and the 2 overhead passes that can be built on. Graygarden receives an 8 in notable elements due to the greenhouse and buildable double-deck overpass. This gives Graygarden a 7.4 overall. Greentop Nursery can be acquired through a Minuteman quest. It's fairly close to Old Gullet Sinkhole and is a short trip away from Malden, giving it a 6 in proximity. The surrounding forestry and landscape is nice, and the greenhouse does add a bit of visual appeal. It receives a 6 in Radiance, but only a 3 in security due to the lack of scrappable items and non-existent protection outside of the houses. Total build area here is rated at a 6. The only notable elements in this settlement are the standard house and a unique greenhouse, giving it another 6. That means the Preston rating here is a 5.4. Hangmans Alley is easily one of my favorite settlements to go to when I need scrap. To acquire it, simply demolish the raider inhabitants. It receives a 10 in proximity due to its close nature to super mutants and Diamond City. It receives a Radiance rating of 4, which would have likely been doubled if you could build on top of the buildings. Most of the settlement can be scrapped, but its small size makes that a very limited amount, which leads to me giving it a 7 in securities. The total build area here is a 1, which is not enough to build anything, not much at least. The many shacks and stalls are the most notable elements here aside from the surrounding buildings, giving this settlement a 4 in notable elements. Hangmans Alley weighs in at a 5.2 on the Preston scale. Jamaica Plain can be acquired by eliminating all of the feral ghouls. With its close proximity to University Point, it's given a 6 in proximity. Jamaica Plain receives an 8 in Radiance because of its unique style, but also the beautiful views you get from the roof. There's a decent amount of defense given by the east walls and the closed house. It also has a moderate amount of scrap, giving it a 5 in securities. It does not have a large build area though, rather a medium to small size one. I've given it a 5 over my initial 4 because of the roof that I'd like to build on. It gets a 6 in notable elements. The closed off building is truly a negative to me, but isn't accounted for. and the remaining is given due to the unique building that contains the workshop and the 2-tier concrete levels. This gives Jamaica Plain a 6. Kingsport Lighthouse is made available by wiping the floor with the Children of Adam and eliminating the feral ghoul at the top of the lighthouse. It's not very far from a crater full of more children of Adam and is also close to Long Neck Lukowski's cannery, giving it a 6 in proximity. It receives a 9 in Radiance due to the beautiful lighthouse and views abroad. It's only rated a 5 in security as it has a decent amount of scrap but lacks in defense, as the cliff face and dock are also part of the settlement. It receives a 6 in total build area as it's uniquely sized, balanced between the medium upper and smaller lower section. The lighthouse isn't all that goes into the 10 the settlement gets for notable elements. It's also the dock, the boat, and the large house. This gives Kingsport Lighthouse a 7.2 overall. Longfellows Cabin is acquired by completing Walk in the Park. This settlement is a tough one for me. The proximity to things is diminished by the water, leaving it with a 2 in proximity, but it makes up for it with a 7 in Radiance, which comes from the interesting earthwork, the calming though foggy views from the walkways, and the cabin itself. It receives a 10 in Securities due to the surrounding waters and abundance of resources. The total build area here is rated at an 8. Many notable elements are present, including a cabin, a surrounding walkway on part of the island, and my favorite part is the small valley in the earth. I love this earthwork. This settlement gets an 8 in notable elements, leaving Longfellow's Cabin with a 7 overall. Murkwater construction site will be able to be claimed after you defeat all of the residing Mirelurks. It is not far from the construction site to Wilson Automatoys or Suffolk County Charter School, giving it a 6 in proximity. It receives a 3 in Radiance as it's not very nice. I'm sure you can clean it up though. The minimal scrap doesn't add much to this defenseless settlement, giving it a 3 in Securities. It does have a medium-sized build area, rated at a 5. The dilapidated house and unfinished warehouse give this settlement another 5. This time in notable elements, the construction site receives an overall Preston rating of a 4.4. Nordhagen Beach can be acquired by completing a Minuteman quest. It boasts a large beach, but no boats. It receives a 6 in proximity due to its range to Fort Strong and Libertalia. The beach receives an 8 in Radiance as it has a great view of the airport, downtown, and the surrounding waters, and it really looks pretty nice itself. It lacks in Securities though. While between half or more of the settlement is surrounded by water, there is limited scrap, giving the settlement a 6 in Securities. The total build area here is large, similar in size to Longfellow's Cabin, giving it an 8. The most notable elements here are a large beach and small shack, giving it a 5 in notable elements. This gives it an overall rating of a 6.6. The Nuka World Red Rocket has a few key differences that make it notably better than its Commonwealth counterpart. This means the work of getting to Nuka World, completing power play or open season, and restoring power is worth it. This red rocket is in close proximity to the Nuka World bottling plant alongside a house just to the east of the red rocket. It receives a 9 for its proximity. This is a very beautiful settlement and contains great views of Nuka World and also has many unique elements in the interior, which gives it an 8 in Radiance. There is no defense surrounding the settlement, but there is a little bit of scrap in comparison to its large scale, giving it a 4 in Security and a 9 in total build area. The Nuka World themed Red Rocket bottle, the Red Rocket Station, and the art inside are some of the most notable elements, giving it a 7 in notable elements. Overall, the Nuka World Red Rocket receives a 7.4 on the Preston scale. Oberland Station can be claimed when another settlement needs your help. It's fairly close to Beantown Brewery, a water treatment plant, and Forest Grove Marsh, providing it with enough for a 7 in proximity. The surrounding areas are very nice, but the settlement itself is very plain, giving it a 4 in Radiance. It also receives a 4 in security due to its lack of surroundings and minimal scrappable resources. The total build area here is rated out of 5, as well as notable elements since it contains the rail house and railroad tracks. This leaves the overall rating for Oberland Station as a 5. Outpost Zimonja is claimable once you defeat all of the residing raiders. Being fairly close to Skylane's Flight 1981, Tenpines Bluff, and a lake that looks interesting from the map view, it gives a proximity rating of a 5. It has some decent views facing out, and the tower is aesthetically pleasing, but the rest of the settlement is less than attractive, leaving it with a 6 in Radiance. There is a moderate amount of scrap here, and a large cliff face that overlooks the settlement, and is pre-equipped with a guard post that helps create a funnel. This settlement receives a 7 in securities. The total build area here is a 4 due to it not being very large in size. The notable elements here are of course the radio tower, the guard wall, and the buildings, giving it a 7 in notable elements. This gives the outpost an overall Preston rating of a 5.8. Red Rocket Truck Stop is acquired simply by using the workbench located in the garage. It's very close to Sanctuary and only down the street from Concord, providing it with a 6 in proximity. It receives a 7 in Radiance as the views from the Red Rocket of the adventures to come are lovely. It may be the nostalgia to me though. It receives a 4 in security because it only really has the one hedge wall, no natural barriers, and a moderate amount of scrappable junk. The truck stop receives a 3 in total build area as it is not very large. The most notable elements are the Red Rocket Station, a large billboard, and that's it, giving it a 5, not just in notable elements, but as its overall Preston rating. Sanctuary Hills is one of the largest, most beautiful settlements, though I feel at least in my case some of it is of course that nostalgia. The overall dynamic of the area is amazing. You're within a decent range of Vault 111, Concord, and the Red Rocket Truck Stop. Sanctuary receives a 6 in proximity as there is still a bit of ground that has to be covered to get to any external resources. This settlement maintains a 10 in Radiance due to the beauty of the surrounding nature, houses, and so on. With all those houses and all the scrap around, it receives an 8 in securities. As one of the largest buildable settlements, it receives a 9 in total build area. Sanctuary Hills has many notable elements, which include a stream, a bridge over that stream, many houses, a cellar, a very large tree in the roundabout, and there's more. While these elements aren't all entirely unique, the way that Sanctuary brings them all together gets it an 8 in notable elements. This averages out to Sanctuary Hills having an 8.2 overall on the Preston scale. Somerville Place is another settlement that would receive a 10 if the Minutemen needed your help. It also requires a Minuteman quest to become available. It does have some resources like Vault 95 and Cutler Bend, but those are a ways away, giving it a 3 in proximity. It receives a 6 in Radiance as I find some beauty in the nearby hill and forestry. Though there is not much scrap in this settlement, nor are there surrounding defenses, which leaves it with a 4 in security. Somerville Place isn't tiny, but it certainly is not large. It's been given a 5 in total build area. As there are no unique interesting elements, it has been given a 2 in notable elements since it's really just a house and a garden, leaving Somerville Place with an overall rating of a 4. Spectacle Island is gained by defeating Mirelurk residents and turning the breaker back on. It's extremely remote, there are no close resources, giving it a proximity rating of a 2, as the closest resources are a ways beyond Warwick Homestead. Spectacle Island is nice, but it lacks in any significant or unique elements that give it raw beauty. It receives a 4 in Radiance, which was determined by the nice views surrounding the water and the landscape itself. Fortunately for this settlement, it comes with a house that has a dilapidated room on the first floor and a warehouse. There's also a barge with a container full of safes and a ship that provides power, and more small structures littered throughout the island. This gives it a 9 in security, as the entire island is surrounded by water and there are so many resources available. As it's the largest settlement on this list, it receives a 10 in total build area. With all those structures, it would be hard to give this settlement anything but a 10 in notable elements, as all those listed earlier aren't necessarily found in other settlements. Spectacle Island receives a 7 overall. Starlight Drive In requires elimination of mole rats. Once they're done for, just claim the workshop in the shed. It receives an 8 in proximity due to its close nature to Lexington and Super Duper Mart. It receives another 8 in Radiance, thanks in part to the views granted from the top of the screen, but also due to the sheer beauty of the diner and projector tower. It's gonna get a 6 in security, not entirely because of the fence surrounding it, but because there's a decent amount of scrap here. It's a very large settlement, giving it a 9 in total build area, and comes with a healing spa if you're ghoulish. There are many notable elements, including the large screen, a projector tower, a diner, and has a small room connected to the screen. It receives a 9 in notable elements thanks to everything mentioned, but also the unique hole of water in the middle. Overall, the drive-in receives an 8 on the Preston scale. To build at Sunshine Tidings Co-op, simply eliminate all of the feral ghouls. It receives a 5 in proximity due to its fairly distant nature from many resources, including the federal ration stockpile and Lonely Chapel. The beauty of this settlement and the views abroad provide it with an 8 in Radiance, not necessarily because of the buildings, but really those views. The total security here is a 5, as there's a decent amount of scrappable junk, but there is minimal defense aside from surrounding buildings. The total build area here is a 9, since it expands very far in every direction from the central warehouse. It receives a 6 in notable elements, thanks in part to the warehouse and variety of surrounding structures. This gives Sunshine Tidings Co-op a rating of 6.6. Taffington Boathouse is claimed by metaphorically using some bug spray on those blood bugs. Once again, you just need to eliminate all of those bad boys and this thing is yours. It's close to Covenant and Malden Center, also Vault 95 and the Slocum's Joe HQ, giving it a 7 in proximity. The boathouse has an interesting waterfront and is appealing to look at. Due to this and the surrounding views, I've given this settlement a 6 in Radiance. There is little to no security aside from the waterfront, and there's an average amount of scrappable junk, which gives it a 5 in securities. The total build area here isn't very large, but it is definitely not small. It is rated at a 6. The notable elements include the warehouse, the house, and the surrounding porch, giving it a 6 in notable elements. This gives Taffington Boathouse an overall rating of a 6. Tenpines Bluff requires helping your friend Mr. Garvey with another settlement. That means completing yet another Minuteman quest, but this one is not so worth it. It receives a 5 in proximity due to its proximity to Outpost Zimonja, Skylane's Flight 1981, and the USAF Satellite Station Olivia. It has some nice views and an interesting bit of dirt work I like to use as a gate area, giving it a 6 in Radiance. The total securities are only a 5 though, as there is minimal scrap and little to no natural defense. Total build area here is roughly a 4, as it's not very sizable. It features one small shack and the mentioned dirt work, giving it a 3 in notable elements, leaving Tenpines Bluff with a 4.6 on the Preston scale. The castle is not immediately near anything else, but within a short walk you'll be at the Gwinnett Restaurant, Brewery, and South Boston High School, giving a 7 in proximity. Due to its historic nature and the beautiful views in every direction, but dilapidated state, it still receives a 9 in Radiance. It is not entirely surrounded, as the build area extends fairly far in front of the front, but due to the above average amounts of scrap and overall defense of the castle structure itself, it receives a 9 in securities. The total build area here is an 8, as it's not extremely huge, but it is very substantial in size. The most notable elements are of course the historic structure itself, the large tower, armory, and many rooms accompanying the corridors. It receives a 10 in notable elements. The castle is rated at an 8.6 on the Preston scale. The Mechanists Lair is unlocked by completing the quest Restoring Order. It receives an 8 in proximity for the short stroll required to get to East Boston, East City Downs, and the Boston Airport. A 5 has been given in Radiance as the lair is fairly dark initially and it has a very aesthetically pleasing area you unfortunately cannot build in. It has an above average amount of scrap for its size and is fully enclosed, giving it a 10 in Securities. The total build area here is a 3, but I have given it a 4 due to the buildable levels on each side. As it is the Mechanists Lair and contains interesting scaffolding and a unique layout, it receives a 10 in notable elements. This puts the Mechanists Lair at a 7.2 on the Preston scale. The Slog is another acquired through Minuteman quests and is truly worth it. It's within a short walk of Saugus Ironworks and a quick run to Parson Estate, which gives it a 6 in proximity. It receives a slightly higher 8 in Radiance for the interesting view of what I believe is a golf driving range, a good looking pool if you don't mind the plants, and some decent views abroad, giving it an 8 in Radiance. It receives a 7 in Security due to not only the surrounding nature, but also the more than decent amount of scrap here. The total build area here is a 5, but like always has been boosted up to a 6 because I like to build on the roofs. The notable elements include a swimming pool, the large pool house, and a playground, giving it a 9 in notable elements, and leaving the Slog with a 7.2 overall. Vault 88 is unlocked by completing Better Living Underground, and then expanded by finding control panels for workshops in each sector. It is located on the edge of a quarry and is close to Suffolk County, giving it a 7 in proximity. It is very cavey. There are some built portions that are aesthetically pleasing as well, giving it a 7 in Radiance. There are not many points of entry, and the defense could vary based off which parts you've cleared, so I've settled with an 8 in Security. The total build area is a 10. This is because it could not be an 11. There are many wings to the vault, but a lot of the notable elements feel repeated with how large the scale of the vault is. I've balanced it to about a 7 in unique elements. This leaves Vault 88 with a 7.8 on the Preston scale. Visitors Center is obtained after talking to Uncle Ken during the holdout. It is not within very close proximity to anything, but is within a decent proximity to the National Park headquarters and Cliff's Edge Hotel, giving it a 6 in proximity. The Radiance here is an easy 8. Between the hedge-divided parking lot and the structure in front of the Visitor Center itself, it just looks great. There is also a junk wall that defends the main portion of the Visitor Center, but the overall security and natural barriers are lower. It does have an excess of scrap though, giving it a 9 in Securities. The total build area here is an 8 and is divided into 2 major sections, the Visitor Center and the parking lot. Those sections are 2 notable elements alongside the patio section and gift shop. It receives a 10 in notable elements, leaving it with an 8.2 overall. Warwick Homestead is unlocked by completing Building a Better Crop or completing Minuteman quests. It is in close proximity to FMS Northern Star and Spectacle Island, giving it a 7 in proximity. The views of the surrounding areas are nice, but the pure industrial look with no additional aesthetic leave me to put the homestead at a 6 in Radiance. It also receives a 6 in Security, as most of the settlement is surrounded by water and it has a front fence which makes for a good gate, but compared to its large total build area, which it receives an 8 for, it lacks severely in scrap. The most notable elements within the settlement are the water treatment plant and a small office on the beach side. There's also even a low display with a rocket bear set up. It receives a 7 in notable elements. This grants Warwick Homestead with an overall Preston of a 6.8. Thank you so much for watching. These are the Preston ratings displayed on the screen. Thank you again for watching. I really enjoyed making this. I wish I didn't have to stop working on it at this point, and I'm recording this at the end of it all.